Hello, everyone. Uh, I'm Manaraj. I'm a front-end engineer at Atlassian, primarily working on the Jira Cloud. So the talk right now is about the simplifying dependency injection in React. Uh, yeah, let's get started. So this is the agenda for my talk. We are briefly discuss about the problem, so what actually we are trying to solve. Um what is the dependency injection pattern, and I mean I have come across few dependency injection pattern. We'll go through a couple of them. One is via default props, one is with HOC, and how we solve all the problems we have with the previous approaches using React Magnetic TI. Yeah, so let's jump into the problem. What is the problem actually? Yeah, so when it comes to the React, where everything is a component, right? So you take a presentation component, you take a controller, you take a service. Everything in React is a component, and easily your simple component will turn into a complex, very hierarchical component. So the efficiency or the effectiveness of the test cases or the stories you provide hugely relies on how you mock those components, mock the dependencies of the component. Yeah. So the problem or the entire talk is will be focusing on how we effectively mock the dependencies of a component using multiple patterns we have, and finally we'll talk about the React Magnetic TI, which simplifies the problems we face in the current world. Yeah, just give attention here. This is the example I'm going to refer throughout my talk. This is just a comments component. It has comments query component. It's a service component where it fetches where it makes a request and gives back the data. If it is loading, yeah, it is loading. And we have this comment state controller. It's a UI state controller where stores the UI state, something like expanded, collapsed, yeah, all the stuff related to UI. We have the controller for it, and we have a comments list, and then we have comment. Yeah, this is the component I'm going to refer throughout my talk. Let me know. I mean, pause me if you're not if you're not clear on something. I will hold on there, and then I will start from then. Yep. So consider this component. I'm going to talk about two things here. So one is the test, and another is the stories. If, if for the test, I mean, how do you test effectively? One way is to mock the comments query and the comment state controller. These two components are the dependencies here, right? So how you test your component is depends on how you mock this. One way is to use the just mock, right? Just mock the imports of comments query and comment state controller. The problem with that is you have to mock for every test you have to cover. So for example, you have to test for the expanded state of the comments list. You have to mock it, and also you have to mock for the collapse state also. This is for comment state controller. What about the comment query controller? Comments query component. You have to mock for every state of the data, like the loading false, if there is an error, if there is no data, right? So you have to mock the imports of the component, and you will end up having huge logic just to mock the components, right? So this is one part of it, which is a test. And what about the stories, right? So where we give the live examples if the component is a public. So in the stories, unfortunately, we don't have a mocking technique like the just mock. What you can do is you have to mock the no if you consider this comment, what you can mock is the request you are making in the comment square, right? And again, you have to mock uh, the multiple requests, right? You have to for the comments query itself, to fetch the comments, you have to consider multiple like you have to mark for the 200, you have to mark for the 400, you have to mark for different states you want to test. Now this is also a problem because the API is actually is a concern of the comments query. It's not the concern of the component you are testing. You are actually uh, not differentiate the concerns. It is bringing the problem by having you need to basically understand the internals of how the comments query work, and you have to bring and you have to mock those in the stories. That is one problem. So if you see the test and stories individually have their problems, and to put together, we are mocking these things in a different way, using just mocks for the story, the test, and we are mocking the request in the stories. So this is what the problem I'm gonna talk about, right? So yeah, so I mean, the problem, to summarize, we are using the just mock, which is not reliable anymore. I mean, it is reliable, but it is bringing a lot of overhead to the developers who wants to write effective tests. And also, you have to mock in different ways in the test stories. This is the problem, right? So this is where the dependency injection pattern comes into the picture. So dependency injection pattern is very simple, where instead of using the dependencies from the direct imports, you pass those dependencies as a props. I will there are, I mean, I have used couple of patterns before. I'm going to show those patterns now. I'm sure there will be other patterns where you can inject the dependencies. I'm going to cover two things. As I mentioned, one is using the uh, I mean, DI via default props. So from now on, if I say DI, so it's basically a dependency injection. Yeah. The idea here is, as I mentioned, all the dependencies you have to use in the component, you pass it as a props instead of consuming directly from the imports. Now give a closer look. We are having the imports, comment square import and the comment state control import. We are providing RSS using the DI, and we are actually destructuring. We are using the JavaScript destructuring and the default value technique here. We are assigning those dependencies as the default values to comments query and comment state controller, and then we use that inside the component, right? So this is how this is how this patterns is all about. We are actually not using the component directly through the imports. Instead, we pass it to the props via props. So yeah, now if you want to write tests, or if you want to write stories for this, all you have to do is you write a mock component for it, and you just pass it as a props instead of just mocking the entire request. um, let's say if you want to write a test for the expanded comments, you can write a component, mocked component with expanded state, and then pass it that component as a comment state controller. And similarly for the collapsed, yes, you can again mock the component with the collapsed state, and you can pass it as a component as a prop, which will be injected in the component. This is one of the pattern, and slightly improved pattern. This is a test, right? I forgot about the stories. Now the stories, it's the same, right? You are actually mocking the components the same way as how you are mocking in the test. Whereas in the previous way, we use just mock in the test, but there is no just mock in the stories. So this pattern is better in solving that problem, right? So you basically are mocking no, the dependencies in the same way in both tests and as well as stories. And the next pattern, which I'm going to talk, is about is using the HOC error component. It is a bit similar, but slightly improved one. Let's take a code, and I hope you'll understand. So here we are not using default values. Instead of passing as a default values, we use a higher order component which takes the actual components, and we assign the direct imports as a prop values. See, if you see here, nothing has changed. Comments, instead of, we are not providing the default values to comments query or comment state controller. Instead of we are using with DI HOC, and we are passing comments, and we are passing comments query components direct import to comments query, and comment state controller component DI to the comment state controller. That's all. I mean, it's just that different variable to the pattern we used before. Instead of passing the default value, now use the HOC. If you want to understand how, I mean, just how, if you want to see how what will be the implementation of with the DI HOC, here it is. It takes a component and injected props. Okay, so it returns a wrapped component with injected props, and also the props used in the actual if let's say if you want to use this component in any of the other component, you use the default instead of the comments. Whereas in test, you have to use the comments instead of the default import. Okay, so that's where, I mean, if you use the export default, it is wired up with the the imports we are doing in here. Whereas if you want to test it, it will be difficult. That's why we have to import the comments, not the default import. We'll look at it. Take a look at it now. So here, so the major, I mean, with respect to testing or writing the stories, nothing has changed between this and this, except we have consumed comments, not the default export, but the actual comments component. Nothing has changed. We still pass the components as a props. Okay, yeah, everything is the same. What about the stories? And again, the same. Nothing has changed between the previous two examples. It's just that we are, in terms of writing tests or stories, nothing has changed. Just that in the how we write, how we inject the dependencies, we use the HOS instead of the default values and destructuring. Yeah, I know. I mean, most of you guys may not be happy on how we are dealing with this, mainly because of these three reasons, right? So we are polluting the API by introducing unnecessary props, right? You don't know what is the real props and what are the DI props. These are the problems, and also you have to provide aliases for all the importers like the DI here, right? So these are the problems, right, with the current approaches and current pattern. I'm sure there will be other patterns as well, which I'm not aware of, but I mean, these are the patterns which I know, which is working well in the industry right now. Now, is there a way, instead of passing the dependencies as a prop, is there another way? Like, why can't we use the React context to drill or inject the dependencies instead of passing as a props? First, say like this. Why don't we just say use this comments query default data and comment state with component expanded, and we use a dependency provider, which is a context provider, and pass it to comments, whereas comments use that and use whatever the mocked dependencies we provided, and comments use this. It's if you give a closer look, comments is not accepting the props which we want to inject. Those are for the previous patterns, but not anymore. Now it's pretty much clean, right? So that's what React Magnetic DI package solves for us. React Magnetic DI makes use of the React context and also a little bit of Babel magic to solve the problems which I explained so far. Hope I'm clear till now, right? Or do you have... Okay,
yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, so React Magnetic DI, it's pretty new in terms of relatively new. It made public 2 months ago. We in Atlassian, we started using the React Magnetic DI, but also the author is from the Atlassian. And if you in terms of the scale, the Atlassian has a big mono repo for the Jira frontend. It is working absolutely fine in terms of scale and in terms of performance, right? So what actually my React Magnetic DI is, how can we use it, right? Let me rewrite the component which I created before and see how React Magnetic DI simplifies it. Yeah, this one. So all you have to do is, this is actual comments component. All you have to do is include the DI statement, where you pass the comments query and comment state controller. Now, what we are saying to the React Magnetic DI is, hey, these are the components which needs to be injected, which needs to be mocked and injected. If you don't mock, that's fine. We will use the actual implementation. Otherwise, we will change the implementation of those components of to the mocked components you provided. It's pretty cool, right? So you don't have to introduce unnecessary props. You just that you have to add a statement to the DI. Oops. If you see this is a functional no component. What about the stateful or the class component? You have to include the same DI statement inside the render as the first one, right? So nothing changes. You still you use the way. Let's say even if the component is already there, you just need to index no do the dependency injection. You don't have to no change the public API by introducing the props. Instead of that, you just add this statement. Nothing changes. There is no change in the public API, right? So that's what it's that cool. What happened? I mean, what happens internally in the backend internally is for the test and the dev environment. In the test and dev environment, the React Magnetic DI will change the implementation of the comments query and comment state controller to the mocked components we provided through the tests or stories. Now, what happened to the production? In production, that's where the Mavel magic comes into the picture, where it just strips off this statement. No effect. Nothing, no, I mean, literally 0% effect in the production, as if there is no changes in the component. That's how cool it is. Now let's see how we can write tests or stories. Yeah, in terms of the exports, React Magnetic DI provides 3 exports. One is DI, which we are using in the component, and another 2 is DI provider, which is a context provider, and injectable. If you see here, the comments query DI equal to injectable of comments query and the comments query default data. Comments query default data is a mock component, and we are telling the React Magnetic DI is, hey, change the comments query implementation to comments query default data. And it is similar for the expanded and collapsed DI. What we are telling to the React Magnetic DI through injectable is, hey, change the implementation of comment state with comments expanded with the comment state controller. That's how that's what we had to do. That's what we had to tell to the React Magnetic DI, and use those the injected components as a use prop in the DI provider. If you see in with expanded comments test, we are using DI provider, we are using comments query DI and comment state controller expanded DI, and we just render the comments. That's all. We are not doing anything here. Cool. And with in terms of the stories, it's the same, right? So if you check here and this, it's just that you have to you have to use the same mocked components and use the same DI provider and use the injectable to the mock any component you want. To summarize, this is how it looks like. In the left side, the actual component, what you have to do is you just need to include a single statement, which is DI. In DI, you have to pass on all the dependencies which you have to mock. It's okay if you add the components which you don't want to mock. DI will take care of the not changing the implementation of that. And on the right side, this is how you actually inject the dependencies using the injectable and the DI provider. Using injectable, you provide the implementation you want to provide for the actual component, and the DI provider, you pass those the injected components there, and that's it. One more thing, the React Magnetic DI also provides the higher order component, which is called with DI. If you see, the first 2 exports is actually similar to, actually same as the second 2 exports. It's just that with DI wraps your component inside the DI provider, and you use the second argument as the injectables. That's all. I told, right, we have to in the production mode, the DI statement will just be stripped off, so that there will be no change in performance, or there won't be any effect at all. You just have to include this line in the Bubble RC or Bubble config.js of your project. It does provides a couple of options, as I mentioned, for the development and the test. Except for the production, it will be stripped off. I mean, if you want to change that, if you want to change that for custom environment, you can use this option. I mean, to enable that stripping off. I mean, when we are using DI, it is easy to misuse, and it for that we need some restrictions, right? So that's where this model also provide ES rules for us, like the order exists to inject, no duplicate of DIs, no extraneous components, and soft dependencies. You can enable this ESLint rules, and somehow you can restrict misusing of the DI. And one more thing which I want to tell about the React Magnet DI, which I liked, is even if you are using any of the patterns like this, any of the patterns right now in your project, and if you want to include the React Magnet DI, it perfectly gels well here. You don't have to change the the public API, right? Whatever the component you have right now. Instead of, you can just, whatever the new components you want to include, you inject those dependencies with DI. You don't have to change the comments query or comment state controller, which is already using the other pattern. It's fine. It's completely works well with other patterns. I mean, you can use two patterns with React Magnet DI. If migrating is a problem for you guys, you can slowly migrate one by one. Yep. Instant rules. Yeah, so these are some cool things. I mean, these are the steps, I mean, the items which I copied from GitHub repo itself. Close to zero performance overhead on dev and testing. It's just we are wrapping the component inside with the React provider. Zero performance overhead on production. Absolutely zero performance, because code gets stripped unless told otherwise using the Bubble config you are modifying, right? One more thing is, I mean, even the CI builds, right? As I mentioned, Atlassian has a huge monolith for Jira, Jira front end, and we have seen nothing or absolutely zero effect in terms of the CI builds, right? So there is a good in that terms as well. Works with any kind of functions or classes. You can dependency inject any functions or any classes. If other than functions or classes, if you want to inject any values, just use the setters and getters, and you can inject that as well. And replaces dependencies at any depth of the React tree. One more thing which I forgot, my bad. Let's say consider this okay example, and let's say you have to use comments in some other, I mean, in the same component. You have to use the comment component in another place. Okay, you can use the DI while mocking it. You can provide the target. You can provide the parent where you have to mock this dependency. It's that cool. You can basically control the hierarchy, and you can control the dependency injection in the hierarchy. It's not like you dependency inject at the top, it will change the dependency for in every occurrence. It's not like that. You can control that as well. Yeah, allow selective injection is what I talked about. Enforces separation of concerns. Yes, just uses context. So it doesn't matter which test or which stories you are using. As long as you are using React, you can use this library. A little bit of limitations here. So if you are using Engine, shallow, we don't have full support for shallow yet, because it's a problem with Enzyme right now, and you cannot use dynamic use and target props. It officially supports injecting only functions and classes, yes, and does not replace default props. Okay, so these are few limitations which we have. Yeah, with this, I'm opening the forum for question and answers. Feel free to uh, ask questions, or I mean, if you want to reach out asynchronously, you can reach out on the Twitter handle I provided, or you can provide comments in the React Magnet DI report itself. The author, Alberto, is an awesome guy. I'm sure he will reply you in no time.